What's up, Silver and Black Nation? The Bat Fry, Kenny Fry here. Welcome to the Silver and Black Lair, LA Kings edition. Today's show, I got a very special guest, Connor Doyle from the Hockey News. Real quick, before I kick it off, today's show is brought to you by our good friend, Jason Fine, attorney Big Al. You can reach Big Al at 1-800-HURT-123. That's 1-800-HURT-123. Jason Fine specializes in motor vehicle accidents, slip and falls, workman's comp, and personal injury claims. He has 3 office locations conveniently located throughout Pennsylvania and New Jersey. His office in New Jersey is located in Cherry Hill on 3 Greensward Lane. His phone number is 856-209-5258. And he has 2 offices located in the great state of Pennsylvania, one on the east side and one on the west side. The one on the west side is located in Pittsburgh on 500 Grand Street, Suite 2900. The phone number there is 412-365-8151. And on the eastern side of Pennsylvania, he has an office located in Philadelphia at 1628 JFK Boulevard, Suite 2120. The phone number there is 267-888-2980. That's our boy, Jason Fine, attorney Big Al. And remember, let him know you're part of the Out of the Box Sports family, and he'll hook you up with a great deal. All right. So like I said, joining me on today's show is our good friend, Connor Doyle of the Hockey News. Welcome, Connor. Great to have you on. I'm super excited. I'm excited just to talk to you, just to pick your brain a little bit. So how you been, bud?
Kenny, it's great to be here. Just enjoying that beautiful, not so fiery Southern California, even though I love the LA Strong shirt.
Enjoying repping.
Absolutely. Enjoying with a little bit of a break from hockey, but not so much a break, right? We got to see a great and classic kind of tilt last night, even though it didn't go US's way. The sport of hockey is just doing fantastic. I think that event was better than anyone could have expected.
And I'll tell you what, I didn't know what to expect because it's 4 nations. I was talking about this at work last night with a couple guys that don't watch hockey, don't even know what's going on with hockey.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought it up. I said it doesn't make much sense to 4 nations leaving all these other superstars out. Like it's you're missing out. Then after watching a couple of those games, I didn't get to watch every game. Even last night's game, I watched a period and a half before I had to go to work. But it was a really exciting hockey. I'm like, man, I'm really looking forward to the next time they do that. I don't know if this, with the success it had this year, I don't know if this is going to be a yearly thing. I know it next year's the Olympics, so obviously they won't do it next year.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, is that something that they're going to do, or are they going to expand upon it? Different nations, like I'm really curious. Like I don't think you can stray away from too many different nations. Like Canada and the U.S., I feel like have to be in there. Those are your biggest markets. That's where all your NHL teams are.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't imagine you really straying too far from that. But instead of like Sweden and stuff, are they going to look somewhere else? I don't know what to expect. I hope they continue doing it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if you. I'm lucky. I met one of my pretty big friends or size wise, over at UCLA. He's on the rugby team, and he got me into the Six Nations. It's on Netflix, like the Six Nations series they had. I don't know if the Gary Bettman stole that idea from there and did 4 nations, but yeah, I think they could expand to 6 nations and maybe do something they did similarly in 2016 in the World Cup of Hockey, where you had like a North American squad. Maybe they have a Western Europe, because think about, I don't want to name just 3 players here from Switzerland, but you got Nico Hischier that wasn't in the tournament, Kevin Fiala, Roman Josi. Like if you had like a Western Europe squad, and then maybe things calm down politically with Russia. I mean, you missed there's a lot of great talent over there in Russia in terms of the skaters they have, but obviously we don't want to dive too much into the political aspect there, but I think making it a 6 nations tournament, and then also the tight time frame you have was a little over a week in terms of the break to kind of fit in like a tournament like this. But from a marketing standpoint, it was a massive success. I think I saw a few things on Twitter in terms of analytics of the highest opted in watch for a hockey game since 2014. And I wanted to kind of check in, like 2014, was that the Kings Game 7 against Chicago, the one that we all remember? But yeah, from a marketing standpoint, Kenny, you're absolutely right. I think they're going to have to take a look at this of doing it again, because it was one of those weird or successful projects that you kind of put out there, expect it to do really well, and then it did just 2 to 3 times the amount you could have ever expected it to.
Yeah, and I guess I think one of the things people are so used to, like sports fans, especially in the United States, is the when you talk all-star games or all-star breaks, it's always kind of half-assed, with the players, and
Hmm.
rightfully so or not, whatever, however you want to look at it. But then you saw this, technically as their all-star break or their all-star games, and just the amount of uh, tenacity and vigor that they went at each other. It was they weren't messing around. They were it was like they were playing to win the games instead of just playing not to get hurt. And I think that was just so refreshing just to see the enthusiasm and just going at it at 100% instead of just going out there and half-ass. And it was a treat to see. It really was.
I totally agree. I would be kind of surprised though to see how this affects players down the stretch, right? We saw a lot of injuries. Shea Theodore got hurt, Adrian Kempe in a hit that he did hold up on. The U.S. had both Kachuk brothers that were, not feeling it. Obviously the U.S. missed Quinn Hughes, but there's some players that played injured throughout the tournament. But those are some key players, particularly Matthew Kachuk for the Florida squad that's looking to defend its championship. That could definitely down the stretch affect these squads, right? Like you take that risk of not having a break. But to your point, Kenny, I saw this a few times on social media as well. But hockey players are different. All right, these are players that play through incredible injuries throughout the playoffs, and when they wear that nation on their chest, this isn't an all-star game. That wearing your nation on I don't want to quote Miracle too much, but the name on the front is a hell of a lot more important than the name on the back. Even in the
Yeah.
All-Star game, it's like what they want to split $1 million prize. What was it the last couple of years that the winning team got to split $1 million, right? Like so it means a lot to hockey players where they come from, and it goes back to what we say. And I know there's a few players that are from other nations, particularly with the Kings, that were they're looking forward to the Olympics because they missed out on this. So yeah, I just think hockey players are just built different. They have a different ideology. They'll bleed for the sport. And a lot of other sports, you see the same type of people that are millionaires, but different in the sense that the values of the game is just at the end of the day, it's just a game. I don't want to take the Joker quote, the Nikolai Jokic, who was just like, this is just a hobby. This is just a game to me. So it's this is passion for other players, and yet they may be top end athletes. Hockey players are different. I think we can both agree there. No.
Oh, absolutely. And
No.
I've said it on the show so many different times that if you really want to get a sense what great hockey is, you watch Olympic hockey or you watch Stanley Cup playoff hockey.
Oh yeah.
Just seeing the just the way those players go at it and the way they
Hmm.
play, and it's just the passion and stuff.
Hmm.
It's unlike anything else. And it's always you look at salaries for the hockey players compared to salaries for basketball, football, baseball players. I mean, we had I'm a Mets fan, so I do a Mets show, the Batcave, on Wednesdays,
Hmm.
and Juan Soto, 15 years, 700 and I think it's $85 million, could be potentially $805 million. I mean, you'll never see a hockey player make that. That's a hockey team. You know what I mean? Like it's amazing, but
He deferred.
this
He deferred most of that, right?
no, that's the thing. There was I don't think there was a whole lot that was actually deferred, if any.
No,
To be honest with you.
that was a joke.
Oh,
It's only because I'm an LA guy, and
oh,
everyone wants to talk about how much they have all these all stars and MVPs, and yeah, they do. They do outspend, but a lot of these guys like Mookie Betts, Blake Snell did it, Otani, like they defer a lot of the money. They're going to make enough money on the side, and that's another subject for another day. But yeah, like deferrals definitely couldn't happen in hockey because your most expensive hockey player, who is at Austin Matthews right now at what 14, 15
yeah,
million,
somewhere around
right?
there.
Like
Yeah,
that would be like a mid or low level basketball player, or like probably the same in baseball, right?
yeah.
So
That's a 38-year-old relief pitcher.
yeah,
So I
exactly.
mean, it's all right. So back to the Kings. So real quick, Connor, how did you become a Kings fan? Have you always been a Kings fan? Always been a hockey fan? Was there something that kind of triggered it for you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. I feel like I'm about to do an elevator pitch right now, but no. So I was very blessed growing up in Southern California. I definitely would use the word. It was an absolute privilege that my mom, for so long, and she's retiring this year after 43 years from Comerica Bank. They sponsor what used to be Staples Center. Now it's Crypto.com. So occasionally, I'd say twice to three times a month, we get to go to Staples Center to go to whatever game they had tickets available for free in like a suite. And being spoiled that in the early mid 2000s, it was hopefully like cross my fingers please be the Lakers, please be the Lakers, please be the Lakers, right? You're watching the Shaq and Kobe era, and then towards the end there, Kobe and Gasol. So you're seeing a winning team, and we'd get tickets to the Sparks, and I'd be okay, this is still entertaining. And then we get the Kings tickets, and I'd sit there on the old Game Boy like, this is boring. I don't want to watch this. What's a power play? Why are there 5? Why are they pulling the goalie? The Kings all.
Offsides.
Yeah, I was like trying to understand it, and my dad was a big hockey guy, so he kind of would try to explain. But kids and Game Boy, I was just completely out of it. But yeah, I will completely wave the flag and admit this out loud. But yeah, I watched the 2012 Cup run with my dad, and it was just, at that point, it was like hook, line, and sink. I was like, this is incredible. I mean, I don't know, even if you have the very baseline of very bare minimum hockey, just watching that run was just 3-0 every series. The way they just, I've never watched a team play, and this goes to this date, right? Even the 2014 team was like, that 2012 team, every game they went into, you just had this like burgeoning confidence that like, this is the team of like destiny. I mean, go 16-4 in the playoffs, only tied with the 2022 Colorado team with the best playoff record of all time, the best road record of all time. So yeah, that's where I was, to use that phrase again, hook, line, sinker, just done. I was completely hooked to that. And yeah, it grew from there.
All right. Awesome. So burgeoning hockey fan there. How did that lead you to the Hockey News? Then you're co-editor of the Hockey News. I love reading articles from you and Carol Balikian. So I'm like, how did you find your way to the Hockey News, or how did the Hockey News find their way to you? However you want to look at it.
Yeah, no, great question. So I didn't do any writing up until about 2022, and then me and a buddy from school just started putting our ideas out there on a Google Doc, and I think we're posting it. I think I called it a line over the boards, or rink. I started off as Rink Lords. We just thought we should just combine our thoughts, because we always, after I think Bannerman and a few other podcasts are like this, how the formation started. But yeah, me and a buddy just spent a lot of time after games kind of like going over it and decompressing and just analyzing the team for what they are. And, we were talking about like an hour and a half, and we just started compiling our notes together onto a document and honestly posting it, which we thought, why not? We saw a few other people do it. We just ran with it. And I mentioned this in my childhood being fortunate, and I got very fortunate again. And I was just probably being respectful enough and posting, honest takes. And I got an invite from King's PR to come to kind of like this social media influencer event. And at the time, I think I had 19 followers on Twitter, and I was like, has to be spam. Has to be spam.
This is
but
real.
Yeah, I was like, this is no way this is realistic. And so I think you could type emails in Google, and then once you finish it, it'll pop up if it's legit. And it popped up, and I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah. So I was all over it. And yeah, it was just, I took it as a networking event, and that's all I did, and shook a lot of hands. And it was almost like perfect time, because right after that, I saw a tweet from Inside the Rink, and they were hiring writers, and I just reached out right after I did a podcast with one of the Vegas subsidiary kind of podcasts for their team. And I thought it was just time to take the next step. And from there, since I had a medium, I was able to go to games more frequently as independent media. You could still reach out on their media site if you are independent media. I didn't know that. And that's where I got the opportunity after, I think, a year with Austin Stanovich, who was the co-editor or the editor at the time of the Hockey News. And he gave me a shot. And there was an opening for editor after a while at the Hockey News, and they offered it to me. And Caro and I split that duty, and it's been a real fun ride. And I'll be at the game Saturday and see the same guys and appreciate them that gave me the look in the first place.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's sometimes it's right place, right time, and sometimes it's just a little bit of belief and a little bit of confidence, and
yeah,
that goes a long way, man. A long way.
I think in any situation, if anyone's listening out there, I think in any situation, no matter what, I mean, just networking and just being able to talk to people. Obviously you're not going around and you're plugging, yourself, but you're selling a bit of yourself in some aspect every day, and you don't have to be a salesman every day, but networking is huge. And I think that's the biggest thing I took from those events was this: if you're going to get a window that's that tight, utilize it. You can still utilize that. And, I found my way chipping away at it, and it's kind of been like a dream come true. And I do not take it for granted. I can tell you that.
Awesome. That's great. Kids, listen up. All right,
Yeah.
listen up, kids. All right, so let's get into a little bit of Kings talk here. It's so far this season. I don't know if you've been surprised how, for the most part, well the Kings have played, or what you were expecting coming into the season. I know myself personally, I was, like, well, I will, probably be close to a playoff spot, or hovering around there somewhere. I wouldn't expect like a one seed or anything like that. So I think the Kings are kind of right around where I thought they would be, at least record wise.
Hmm.
But the way they've gotten there with the staunch defense, especially going moving away from last year's the last couple of years with the 1-3-1, moving on to a new setup here with Jim Hiller. So I didn't know really what to expect defensively, and I was hoping for a little bit more offense. But it's with Kings have remained staunch defensively, and offensively
Hmm.
at times a bit of a struggle. So well, so far, your thought or your opinion, or however you want to look at it. How do you think the season so far has turned out? 53, I think, or 53 or 54 games in. It's 53 games played for the Kings. So
Hmm.
53 games in. Like what are your thoughts on this season so far?
I think you're seeing a lot of boxes being checked off that follow suit with the last three seasons. Obviously, 2 seasons ago, they have that record-breaking great season with a team that was had Gabe Velarde, had Kevin Fiala. It was the first season with that group together. They're checking a lot of the same boxes. You're looking at a mid-season kind of winter, kind of falling from grace. They were hot. They fall from grace. They make some kind of skeptical decisions with their personnel. We saw the end of the Kaliev saga this season. They're swimming in same territory of not being overly concerning, but this team is just finding itself being just good enough to be relevant and then set themselves up to be squashed in the first round. That's
Yeah.
currently how I feel. That's currently how I've seen it. That's currently how it's following the trend of the last three seasons. Obviously, we can get towards the trade deadline, but this is a team that was riding a hot goaltender. Are they going to ride him all year towards the postseason like they did with Cam Talbot last year? Cam Talbot was the only goaltender last year with a goal saved above expected in double digits on the penalty kill. They ran him into the ground towards the end of the year, and guess what? That team got torched by Edmonton on the PK,
Oh
like they
my
do
God.
every year. Yep. So
Nightmare.
you're following specific trends that you followed the last 3 years, and you look at the results the last 3 years, and you got to ask yourself, what is the plan with this year? Or is it something similar? I'd say the biggest silver lining from this year for sure, Kenny, is the emergence of Quentin Byfield, and I think that's obviously a huge topic of discussion there. But that is your glimmer of hope, because as much as fans want to hear about Brandt Clarke taking the next step, he has certainly been a lot better than last year. But what, did he play 16 games all last year? Of course, I expect him to do better. Drew Doughty goes down to start the year. Of course, he gets a larger role. But we're looking at a player in Drew Doughty that possibly could be playing until he's 40 years old. What does that mean for someone who wants to become the number one defenseman?
Yeah, I mean, the Quentin Byfield. Real quick on that, there's like you look at the social media aspect part of it. You see a lot of fans, you know, I've seen a lot where they say trade QB, trade Quentin Byfield, it's stuff like that. I've seen a lot of those posts. I've seen some like when is he going to take that next step? And when I watch hockey, and I'm not a big analytics guy. I'm not a big numbers guy. I like
Mm-hmm.
watching. What I see is how I think that when I watch Quentin Byfield play, I see a guy out there that's playing really well. And now the pucks aren't going in the net for him, obviously, but I see him, attacking the front of the net. I see him, battling in front of the net, digging out pucks in the corners and stuff like that, and defensively getting back, poke checking away, good back checking, and working the forecheck as well. So I see a guy that's working his ass off, and I feel like he's playing really well. It's just numbers wise, that's what people want to see. It's just not there for him. It's not falling for whatever reason. And I feel like it's one of those things when the water starts uh, coming out of the faucet faster. It's gonna pour.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a drip right now, and sooner or later it's gonna drip, 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 and then it's just gonna start flowing. And I feel like as soon as he gets a couple of those goals that we've come to expect from last season, a couple of those like really like magical type goals. You know what I mean? Kind of fancy, between the legs and shooting over the glove hand or whatever. and expecting stuff like that, which isn't something you should be expecting. You expect them to work hard to dig
Hmm.
stuff out and set other guys up. So I just feel like there's people are putting too much emphasis on his stats than what he actually does on the ice for his teammates around him. 'Cause right now, that line is just it has been amazing. Before the break, with Byfield, Fiala, and Laferriere, finally Fiala showing a little bit more consistency because I feel like that's one of the guys on this team outside of Kempe, and it's somebody I talk about on the show all the time. Fiala, I feel like he could be like a superstar Kings wise anyway. I'm not talking like superstar like a like a Dryside or McDavid or anything like that, but Kings wise on this team, he
Hmm.
could be a standout. He and Kempe, and I feel like Kempe's been super consistent where Kevin has not so much, but just like last season, when the Kings really struggled in January, I felt like Kevin Fiala really carried that team through that swoon in January last year, and I felt like this year, near the end of January, he started really ramping up his play offensively, and even not taking any goofy ass penalties or just the boneheaded pass across the middle. You haven't seen a whole lot of those recently. So I feel like Fiala's really stepped up. I attribute a lot that to Quentin Byfield. Just taking control of his line, and just things are starting to click with those guys. And with Laferriere, he's had a couple goals there in I think it was in February, the end of January, disallowed. That were huge bummers when the Kings were struggling, and so yeah. So I just think people need to kind of chill on the whole
Hmm.
Byfield backlash and stuff, and just let the dude cook. Because I feel like he's cooking right now.
Yeah, so I think breaking down with some of what you said there, that I think it's really important to note is that I think Byfield's been playing great all year. I think that tri-state area trip, he really broke out in a serious way in terms of confidence. He's been playing great all year. We're talking about a player that who are his most common line mates this year. Before the Kevin Fiala and Lafayette, it was Tanner Jeannot and Warren Fogle, and that line became a force. If you're playing with two guys that I don't necessarily have up there in high end skill, Warren Fogle is bona fide, maybe like fringe second liner that can play against top players and complement top players. And Tanner Jeannot, who's he does have his one off, I think 28 goal season, but we're talking about really like a fringe second liner and a third line player at best. And if fans are screaming, why isn't he breaking out? Let me just put it this way. If this team actually handed over the keys and QB's playing this way, and let's say he was playing with, obviously they didn't keep him, but let's say he played with a Gabe Velarde and a Adrian Kempe on the line all year. I mean, I would stake my life on it, but I could argue that this is a 60, 70, maybe even 80-point guy right now, the way he's playing. But look at his line mates. Same thing goes with Fiala early on in the year. I mean, Fiala doesn't click with many players, but if you're throwing him on a line with a low percentage shooting or back down to earth, Trevor Moore and Philip Deneau, I'm not expecting him to pop up. Carolina game is when Fiala breaks out and he makes two plays that are individualistic. It gets the Kings over the hump. They win against Carolina, but do I see that as great team play? I see that being the highlight reel player he is.
Yeah,
I don't want to sound too pessimistic here, but I have coined him as like the almost highlight reel player. He's a guy that needs to be on a line where he has possession of the puck. He needs to be the puck carrier. He's someone that is very puck hungry with the puck on his stick. This isn't a guy that you have out on the line to forecheck. No, this is a guy that wants the puck on his stick in the offensive zone. And that's why it doesn't work with Kopitar and Kempe. You have two guys that like the puck on their stick. And while Kempe is, I would say, their closest thing to a superstar, which the names you mentioned, and he's on the outside looking in for sure of the league's superstars, but just he's right there. I wouldn't say Kevin Fiala is there. This Kevin Fiala is a guy that is kind of good enough to be one of your top players, but yet you can't play him against the top players,
yeah,
right? He came to the squad in kind of like a very, I guess it would be like a move that obviously has its certain setbacks because we just watched Brock Faber last night, right? So it's a watershed of moves there. But yeah, going back to your point, it's good to see that Fiala and QB are playing together now, and that's why we're seeing the Kings kind of break out of their slump because QB was playing so well after the tri-state trip. They come back for that home tilt, and we saw QB get matched up against all the top matchups, right? And he's been thriving. So if you want to, hop on the train for the Stützle Byfield debate, Stützle's going to go get 90 points, but Now you have this 6'5" skater that's keeping up with McDavid, at least checking wise, and keeping players like that off the score sheet. You're following the identity that the Kings have been producing for well over a decade, is that they're going to be an elite defensive team and kind of just tread water offensively, try to make a move at the deadline to get some type of offensive punch, and hope that recipe wins you a Stanley Cup, which obviously it has not in over a decade. But I think he's following the cultural and the schematic fit, and I couldn't be happier for Byfield. He's just in a situation where he's kind of set up to not succeed in the offensive output. But since he's with Fiala and they are clicking, let's not forget, Kenny, they were paired together and they were talked about as the next big thing for the Kings in the offseason. I know I wrote about it. There was a lot of hype that maybe, just maybe, this could be the third line matchup they've been looking for. Because let's not forget, 2 seasons past, Velarde was paired with Fiala in the playoffs, with both of them coming off injuries, and they both were starting to do damage against the Oilers, but Gabe was not fitting out at center. They moved Gabe for Pierre-Luc Dubois. Pierre-Luc Dubois doesn't work out, right? It's a watershed of bad moves again. But now they finally have a center that looks to be able to handle top matchups, taking away some minutes from Kopitar to know. Hopefully giving them rest down the stretch so that in the playoffs come, maybe you switch that back over to what we're seeing now with Fiala and QB taking over games.
Yep. So I got a quick question here from a viewer. Paul checks in. He says, is this the year the Kings can go deep in the playoffs? So the way it sits right now, standings wise, if you look at the way it sets out, you have your Central, you have Winnipeg, Dallas, and Minnesota as your top 3 in. The West, you have Edmonton, Vancouver, Vegas, and the Kings as your 3 in, and you have your wild card as Colorado, Vancouver. So the way it would sit right now, the Kings would play the Golden Knights. I feel better about the Kings playing the Golden Knights than I do the Oilers, for obvious reasons. I can't, a 4th year in a row, it would just be a slap in the face. But I don't know what a deep run. I just don't know if they have the scoring for it. They definitely have the defense for it, and then with the defense comes the goaltending. But I mean, if they can get a couple hot hands, you just never know. That's a thing about hockey, and it's a thing about playoffs for any sport, is who's hot going into the playoffs, and who's playing well defensively going to the playoffs, and who can be the healthiest. So I think a lot of it comes down to that when you look at playoffs. There's always the opportunity. Everybody starts 0-0, no matter what seed you are. When you go make the playoffs, slate's clean, and anything can happen. We saw that. What was that? Was it 2012 when the Kings were the 8th seed? Was that 12 or 4? Yeah, 12.
12.
And so anything can happen. Anything can happen. Absolutely. So it could happen, but it's just one I'm not holding my breath. So
I wouldn't either. Paul, well, I know it won't be my thing. Well, that's a great. So Paul, great point with the Penguins, right? So Penguins in 2009 win a Stanley Cup after failing to win the year prior against the Detroit Red Wings in a Game 7. They win in a Game 7 in 2009. They run it right back with the same squad 7 years later, and they go back to back, right? But they run it back. They commit to the same squad. The Kings have committed to the same core in terms of squad wise that they won over a decade ago. It's been 11 years, right? Do you continue to think that the same formula in an ever-changing league? It used to be defense wins championships first. I don't know if that's the same formula. I mean, this is one of the most elite defensive teams in the league the last 3-4 years, and guess what? It has not paid away any results. I am known around my colleagues to be pessimistic, but I think it's a realistic point of view, right? This formula has not worked. You look at some of the teams. I don't know if I particularly, I think this is the one area, Kenny, I think we disagree on, but I don't know if I want to play Vegas over Edmonton, right? I think Vegas may have the edge over Edmonton. And they just almost sent 3 players on their defensive core alone to the Four Nations: Shea Theodore, Alex Pietrangelo, and Shea Theodore, Noah Hannafin, and Alex Pietrangelo. That's 3 players out of 6 on their back end that were going to the Four Nations, a very limited tournament of the best teams, right? This is a team that has Jack Eichel, Mark Stone, Tomas Hertl. I don't know if I want to. That's one thing the Kings lack, right? They lack a true game-breaking superstar. You got Adrian Kempe, who I would say is right on that periphery, right on the outside. But this isn't a team that gives me the, oh, they're ready. They're right there. We were told by ownership the last season, oh, we were right there. Were you really? You've lost in the playoffs in descending order to the same team. Yes, we're catching the Oilers on the rise as we're kind of in this weird middle ground where we switch from rebuild to we're going to contend. I don't think so. You look at some of the teams out west, and I look at their talent. Dallas with Miro. You got Wyatt Johnson, Jake Ottinger, like elite talent on the back end. Colorado, Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, Dwayne Seymour. They picked up Nashus. Winnipeg, the way they're playing with their stars, and then out west with the Oilers again with legitimate top tier players, and same with Vegas. I mean, you're looking at a favorable 7-game series, and I just don't really see any right now. And that leads us to probably our next discussion about the trade deadline. But you really have to go get a game-breaking superstar talent for me to say maybe this team actually gets past the hump. And then we go back to the QB discussion. If QB continues to play this way and he pops off with Kevin Fiala, is the matchup thing going to be what they're going to be riding on? Right? They've been hoping for that, but I think Zach Dooley pointed this out the last time the Kings play the Oilers, but Draisaitl, McDavid are rotating on their fourth line in 11-7. We beat them this year on an 11-7. And that was an overtime game. As soon as the Oilers go to 11-7 and they're at home with the matchups, we don't have an answer for McDavid on the fourth line with Draisaitl. We don't have an answer for 97 and 29 on the same line. I don't think anyone in the league does. Florida had to almost have an 0-3 comeback, or the opposite of a reverse sweep, almost get negated in the Stanley Cup Finals because those two are so hard to handle. Right? So I'm losing spit over here because of how long-winded I'm going. But yeah, because it comes from years of, I think, of just frustration watching this team just, same idea and just going to keep throwing it at a wall. You want to add just good enough players at the deadline, or just good enough players in the offseason around a core that hasn't won in 10 years. And to finish this point, Paul and Kenny, you're talking about a team that won, yes, in 2012 as the 8th seed, but they had guys forming up to be top 3 players in their position, right? Kopitar was arguably the best center of his generation under Crosby. You could say the same thing with Doughty under Carlson, Duncan, Keith, right? Maybe you can even throw Shea Weber into that mix, but top players in their position. Where do the Kings have top players in their position in their prime right now? Right? Adrian Kempe, maybe, and he's on the periphery, or he's on the outside looking in, right? So I'll end it there, and because I could go on and on about how I think that anyone saying that this Kings team goes deep in the playoffs probably is a little misguided again.
Yeah, and again, you could always go with the anything can happen thing, but realistically, it's just it doesn't look promising. And before we talk about the trade deadline, back to the basically the aging stars, the aging core.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at Kopitar, Doughty, and I guess to another extent there, Trevor Lewis. But like, when do you move on, or when do you lessen the roles of, because Kopitar is still producing. He's not producing at like a high goal rate, but he's still getting assists. He's still battling in front of the net, getting goals that way, or at least trying to with rebounds or redirecting and stuff. A lot of them get saved or just miss the net. But when do you let like somebody like Quentin Byfield ascend to that role where Kopitar is now, or somebody like like Brand Clark, into the Doughty role, or whatever, you know what I'm saying, or Jordan Spence, I know he's been rumored for trade talks. Well, like I said, we'll talk about that in a minute. When do those older stars take that step back and forced by manager, hey, we need to kind of cut your time a little bit here and give this guy more time in your place.
Yep.
When does that happen, do you think?
Yeah, so I could throw, perfect example, dart at the board, right on the bullseye, Jim Neal in Dallas, right? Dallas, I think, is like the banner or the standard bearer for having aging stars and still building a elite squad, right? This is a team that has Thomas Harley, Wyatt Johnson, Jason Robertson, right? So this is a few seasons ago with Jim Neal sitting down with Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, saying, you had the keys. You're still going to wear letters on your chest. You're still going to be part of the squad, leader squad, but we're going to hand over the keys. You're going to support them moving forward. That takes leadership and management ownership to be like, this is the vision we have moving forward. And this is why I think there's a larger ended theme here of having your like franchise legends running the team and just saying, oh, well, these two guys won cups. You guys pretty much have full control of the squad, full keys. I can't see Robitaille or Blake sitting down with Kopitar and Doughty being like, you're going to take a step back and you're going to hand over the keys. You'll still be leaders. That never happened. That's not going to happen with this squad, but should have happened a couple of years ago. Yeah, Byfield's had his injuries and he's been sick. He had that opening sickness or that illness that one season. Brant Clark's kind of just arriving now, but it's going to be 2 more seasons till Kopitar's probably retires, till Byfield truly becomes a number one. And it's going to be who knows how many years, because Doughty, the way he plays and the way he loves the game, he might be playing until he's 40. So we're talking about 5 years. 5 years until Brant Clark's maybe taking over the number one power play, the number one spot, the time on ice. 5 years, he'll be 27 years old, right? This is a player that should be playing number one minutes now. And guess what? That's probably a team that's going to be seeing a lot of mistakes. It's not a development league, but this isn't a championship caliber team that's in the position to win right now.
Yeah.
So you might as well be handing over the keys and building around your future. You still have this core that, like, I wouldn't say is elite anymore, because you've shed so many of the assets that you should have considered elite and developed properly and handed them the keys, that you still have a core there that you can still work with. And yet we're watching that kind of waste away. So to answer your question, yes, it should have happened a few seasons ago, but it was never going to happen with a team run by franchise legends trying to held the franchise legends of the current team to kind of sit back and support the future, right? They are the current future. They are the current team. And I don't think management looks at it that way.
And it's, I guess one of those things like, when do you stop trying to build around them? Because I've heard that a lot over the last season and a half. Kopitar, Doughty, they want to still contend for a cup, and that's what the Kings are trying to do. I'm like sometimes you just gotta tear it down to rebuild it. You can't do it halfway. And then kind of hopefully build it to the same. I think it has to go all the way back down to the foundation. And sometimes that means moving on from a player, franchise great, something that's going to have numbers in the rafters someday, or it's having them lessen their roles. So it's, I agree 100%. It has to be something like that. I'd rather, instead of settling in mediocrity, like just being a playoff team, I would settle for a couple of years of rebuild, like losing rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
A couple more, just to kind of get younger, get those better draft picks, and build from there. Because the farm system, or whatever you want to call it, I've talked about this so many different times about comparing a hockey farm system, which isn't really a farm system, compared to minor league baseball, which is a farm system for baseball. I said it's the same, but it's not the same. So it's all real confusing. But just like rebuilding, from your minors up, and in order to do that, you have to lose. And it's that's the Kings are trying to salvage something that probably isn't salvageable now because of where these guys are in their career. And like you said, you're wasting minutes or prime years of younger guys' careers like Brant Clark, and where they should be ascending in roles over the next few years, where now they're going to kind of linger back a little bit, losing minutes or losing valuable ice time against top talent, to where they're going to get better. And they're losing out on that right now, I think, anyway.
Yeah, and I would bring up like 2 players specifically I think about that just joined the league almost immediately. Yeah, it's touch and go, right? There's plenty of players you come in the league and you can get burned and you could ruin their confidence for sure. But I think about Jonathan Toews and Bo Horvat. I think about Jonathan Toews coming into the league when Detroit was still in the Western Conference and the Central Division. And I think about some of the interviews he had where he talked about having to play Pavel Datsyuk 5 times a year, right? We're talking about Bo Horvat when he came into the league. He's having to play 5 times a year Joe Thornton, Ryan Getzlaf, Anze Kopitar as a kid pretty much still, right? You're getting handed over the keys. It's trial by error. It's trial by fire. But I love the expression, you don't win and lose in this life. You win and you learn, right? Everything's a learning lesson, right? You're handing over the keys kind of to Byfield now that he's 22, turning 23, but he's not going to fully get the keys till he's 25 when Kopitar retires. let's talk about the type of Byfield when he's 25 that he was handed over the keys 2 years ago. That's the draft plus 2 years development, right? You talk about the farm system. The Kings had with the Athletic, they ranked them as high as number two to 5 from the years of 2017 to 2020. Now that's completely shot. Right, this is a team that boasted Brock Faber, Brant Clark. I wouldn't throw Akil Thomas back in there, but Gabe Velarde, Quentin Byfield, Alex Turcotte. They had many top 10 picks, a ton of top 10 picks over those years, and they had this core building. And like you're saying, these aging stars are continuing to hold the keys, and they're not handing it over. And so the question is when to tear it down. We're past that point. Now you kind of have to plant the flag in the ground. Yeah, maybe a team that's competing wants to go pick up and like this would never happen with this organization, but to go pick up and trade an Anze Kopitar, like the culture shock that's going to do, or Drew Doughty, I'm sure someone would take on if we retained salary, but they're never going to do that.
Yeah.
Toronto did it a couple of years ago with Ryan O'Reilly, and I just there's no way that would happen. They're going to stand by these two players, but to your point, the farm system was great, and it's just not now. You're kind of running on loose threads.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The Arthur Kaliev thing that kind of bummed me out because you hear about so much potential that he had,
Yeah.
but it just for whatever reason it just didn't work out, and hopefully he finds himself. I want to see him do well. Like he's with the Rangers right now, and wherever he ends up. But it was just a bummer they couldn't work it out because you hear about how great his shot was going to be. I listened to a lot of Locked On Kings with Eddie Garcia. I think he's great.
Yeah,
that's who one day I strive to be. I want to be the next Eddie Garcia, 20 or 30 years down the road. It's I really dig the way Eddie does his show and stuff, and like his presentation and his knowledge and what have you.
Yeah,
But yeah, absolutely. But you talk about Arthur Kaliev's shot. Has a great shot, and it's just unfortunate that to see that kind of go to waste. And I was a big Gabe Velarde fan. I also liked Alex Iafallo for some reason. I don't know if that's from watching him or from playing NHL. I think it was 21. I think it was, and I was just killing it with Alex Iafallo. So I don't know if that was, sometimes I get the two confused. I don't know between real life and a video game.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just some of the younger talent that they've lost over the seasons. Trading for a wish and a prayer almost. PLD, Pierre-Luc Dubois. For all intents and purposes, you figured it was going to work out. I thought, I was kind of okay. That's a lot of money, but this guy's not an established superstar, but he's an established player. He's decent. With a little bit of baggage to him. Maybe a change of scenery again. I think the Kings were his third or fourth team or whatever it was. But it didn't work out. It didn't work out again. Now you lost all those assets there, and Dursey and stuff. I don't know. What his outlook, his future was going to be with the Kings, but it's another name, another guy, young guy that we lost. So it's unfortunate, and moving on from that. Now we've been on it for a little bit. It's just bumming me out. So looking at the trade deadline. So speaking of PLD and trade and whatever. So is there anything the Kings can actually do at the trade deadline? I've been hearing Brock Besser a lot. I don't know if that's even if that's feasible or not, but I think it was it might have been Caro wrote something about
Jonathan Marchessault.
From Nashville, who was just traded to Nashville this past offseason. Was having a pretty decent season, and I think I think Caro said he's making like $5.5 or $5 million, and he broke down what the Kings have available at like $4.5, and what a potential trade with I think he had. Was it Jordan Spence or I don't remember who he had.
It was like Jordan Spence with a
second round pick,
something like that. Yeah,
and then that would make the money work. But is there anybody out there you see the Kings can get that would actually make a difference? And obviously with limited funds here.
Yeah, I mean, I would. I think the Kings would be a little misguided if they went and got Jonathan Marchessault because I think he would make an immediate impact this year to a team that's probably not going to get past the first round. And then I believe you're stuck with his contract for 5.8 until he's 38 years old. He's already in his mid 30s. You're picking up a very serious contract that doesn't thread the needle and that you're stuck with for a few years. Yeah, I mean, they're tied to a few names. You know, I saw that they're tied to Alex Tuck and Brock Besser, but if we're talking about 30 or maybe 20 to 30 teams that are competing for that contract, you're going to be giving up a lot. And Paul, I do see your question about, is there a salary cap in the NHL? Absolutely. I believe it's at, I could be wrong, but I believe it used to be at 82 million, but I believe it's at 88 now. I could be, if you want to pop that up in the chat or pop that up in the internet, I believe it's in the mid 80s or late, or like in terms of 88 million. But yeah, there's a salary cap, and the Kings have about a little under 4.5 million. I think they're at 4.49. They're going to have that to play with, but with that much money and what little resources they have to dangle, I don't see them picking up a player that much value. I think the Kings fans should really get accustomed to watching Jake Evans highlights.
Oh no.
But I
So
mean,
Paul,
great player, but I mean, is a fourth line center gonna 95.5? Wow, I am way off. Is that the projected for next season or current?
I think that might be projected for next. I know it's supposed to take a huge jump next year. They were saying. I feel like that might be projected for next season. So I feel like it's going over 90 million. But I feel like it was 88 or 89, like you were saying. But it's supposed to be a big jump there. I think they're projecting it to continue jumping,
Yeah,
which is good
88
news.
million.
But
88 million.
88
88
million.
million current. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
But yeah.
well, and so if there isn't anybody out there, like realistically the Kings could bring in, like, do you see anybody, any like a call, like there's Samuel Foggymo, he's been up and down over the last couple seasons, and he's doing pretty well down there in Ontario still. Like, do we see him again? I liked Samuel Elenius, and when he was up, he's not a scorer, but I like his brutish force that he was able to bring. He and Andre Lee, I really dug when he and Andre Lee were in the same line, the fourth line. I was really a big fan of that. And that's when I think Trevor Lewis was out. We got to see that a good bit, and it's like kind of like the Bash brothers out there, just a couple of big dudes out there skating, and skating well. They're doing a good job, and just physically handling themselves. So but is there anybody in the system like in Ontario right now that they could bring up and that would actually make a difference?
Short answer to that, no. So if anyone's thinking that Sammy Fagemo is coming up and getting top 6 minutes and providing his shot, but able to play against top players come down the stretch in playoff time, it's a little misguided. Would have been great if he was integrated a few seasons ago and they just stuck with it. And for a player like just like Kaliev, like you drafted a scorer knowing his faults. He had a couple tools in the tool shed, but a couple things lacking. You drafted him for it. But then when you say, wow, he has these holes in his game, you drafted him knowing there's holes in his game because he's scoring, but he's playing for a team that preaches and prides defense first. Are you going to call Sammy Fagemo up, and is he finally going to get top 6 minutes as the Kings play down a critical stretch of very tight defensively sound hockey? He's getting top 6 minutes and popping in goals? No. Is he going to be a Marty Firk and come in and just play 4 or 5 minutes and half of that's on the power play? I don't see that either. You might as well just go with 11-7. So, yeah, I don't see any there's no internal options, right? Liam Greentree would be the only internal option, and that couldn't be an option until 2 seasons from now?
Yeah.
So
for everything I've heard from Eddie Garcia, he did a great show the other day on the Kings. The whole show wasn't on Kings prospects, but he had a segment on the show about Kings prospects, and he talked a little bit about Liam Greentree, and I think he's on pace for like 90 plus points or whatever.
Yeah.
For wherever I don't remember exactly where he's playing at, but so yeah, I think in the OHL or something like that.
He is playing in the OHL, and another thing I would always consider when you're, and it took me a long time to kind of separate kind of the leagues. The OHL is not an overly physical league. It's actually one of the most like hands-off leagues in terms of the physicality and the brutality that hockey does see. Not as tight checking as say like where Kopitar came from and the SHL, like coming over from Europe. A lot of European, especially like the Swedes, they play in their system like very, very defensively sound hockey leagues, right? Where you look at you look at Canada, a lot of the OHL, maybe not the WHL, because I think the WHL is a little bit more physical. Those Western Hockey Canada boys. But the OHL is definitely like, oh, wow, this guy's scoring 100, 120, 90 plus points. You know who also scored at a high rate in the OHL? Or I believe it's not the OHL. You know who scored a high rate when he played in one of the Canadian hockey leagues? Is Jared Anderson Dolan. Where's he at? Right. Nothing against the player, right? But
Yeah.
you can do great in the OHL until you translate that over to the pro game in America and in the NHL or AHL. You're not really telling me much, right? It's very hard. It's a very hard. Like I am jealous. I would love to be a scout, but at the same time, I'm not jealous of being a scout because that'd be a very difficult job. Like, wow, this guy's absolutely killing it in the OHL. He's like Arthur Kaliev breaking records or being up there for top 16, 17-year-old goal scorers of all time next to players like Stamkos and DeBrincat and McDavid. Like, you're looking at one of the greatest OHL scorers of all time. Now he's getting healthy. Now he's a healthy scratch for New York. He's been waived. It's a very tough thing to read. So Liam Greentree, I hope he has the best. He has tarmac. He has a lot of trajectory. We have no idea how that's going to translate. I mean, I think he has size. I think he has great size for someone his age. And I think if he plays with a little bit of bang, he's going to do just fine. Is he going to be an elite player in the NHL? I think that's far from being seen. You can pile up the numbers all you want in the OHL. I'm not going to be sold until you play the pro game.
All right. I didn't see that stuff. I have no idea about. I have no idea about the OHL, WHL. I mean, I've heard of those leagues now recently,
Mm-hmm.
and so I like, style of play, stylistically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have no idea. So it's like that's good to know, because you hear numbers like 90 plus points or whatever, like, holy, this guy's killing it. But then when you talk about 90 plus points in a little bit of a softer league, it's like, all right, it's a little bit different.
As I mentioned, if Kings fans are familiar with Jared Anderson Dolan, this guy
That's
popped off in the Canadian League as well.
Paul says, I've been going to a lot of AHL games lately. Johnstown Tomahawks, since it's only 5 minutes for the house from the house where they filmed Slapshot. Well, there we go.
Oh, cool.
Slapshot, an all-time great American movie right there.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And that's one thing I was kind of excited for last year was in the AHL. That's what the Ontario Reign are in, and 45 minutes away. I live 45 minutes from Hershey, Pennsylvania,
Oh, wow.
And the Hershey Bears. I think they're 3 years in a row they've won the Calder Cup. But I seen the way the Reign were playing last season in the playoffs, and that's the first time I ever listened to Reigns on the Ontario Reign on the radio. And I was through their playoff run. I'm like, oh man, they might make it to Hershey and go wear my Kings jersey and go watch the Reign play. And they kind of fell short though, I think by 2 rounds or whatever.
Yep.
But as I'm hoping maybe this year they're playing well again this year. I think they're behind. Shoot, I can't remember who it was. It doesn't matter who they're behind, but anyway, they have a decent team down in Ontario. It's just there's nobody down there that I see either. Like we were talking about Foggy Mo. If it was meant to be, it would have happened by now. I just don't feel like it's. He's a difference maker, and I don't feel like there's anybody down in Ontario right now that would be a difference maker either. So I think what we have now is what we're going to be rolling with, to be honest with you. So it's maybe a minor move or two, and it's not going to be anything that's going to be substantial.
Yep. I would say you're probably looking at a Jake Evans or like a fourth line center upgrade, because I don't think they're going to. I think they're going to run Trevor Lewis as a fourth line center down the stretch. I don't think that's wise. I would not advise upon that. I think you have to come to terms with a fourth line center and then try to make a move in the off season and go get a Brock Besser. But then again, I still don't think that threads the needle. I know there's reports that Rantanen is potentially wanting out of Carolina, even though he's just traded there, and Carolina may retain some retention. That's a superstar player, but he's going to come to a team that's defense first and be a 100-point player, turn into a 50 to 60-point player. And then people are going to say that he's chumming it down in LA, but realistically he's just playing the schematic here. I don't see it. I don't see them making a significant enough move without having to sacrifice their future. To make any significant type of move, they'd have to give up Greentree, at a minimum Spence. And like I mentioned earlier, and, maybe people want to get pitchforks for me saying this, but I think they'd have to trade Clark. And I think that's an actual viable option, because you might as well trade Clark if he's going to be the number 2 for the next 5 years under Drew Doughty, who's past 35 years old.
Yeah.
You might as well let him go play somewhere else and go get value. You want to make a big splash or make noise in the playoffs. I mean, if you want to go get a big name, you're going to have to send assets back. This is no longer a league where I think you can fleece people. right? I think at first I thought the Kings fleeced Minnesota for Kevin Fiala because of a bad situation that Rob Blake took advantage of. But right now it looks like they're fleecing the heck out of us,
Yeah, if
right?
Faber, he's turned into a pretty good one, right? So
I don't know if when they drafted him, they thought he was going to be a arguable number one guy, but he's become a number one guy. I mean, he was excellent in the Four Nations tournament. He
yeah,
was a Calder runner up. I mean, he's just been like, imagine this decor. They never trade him. You have a decor coming up with Brant Clark and Brock Faber. You have a very top end offensive skilled defenseman coming up, and you have a very elite defensive first defenseman who skates like the wind. Also, I mean, like the assets they've given up, and we can go on and on about the assets they've given up. So they currently just don't have what it takes to thread the needle to go make a move of that nature. And if they do, they're going to sacrifice what very little assets they have. And I know I was on board with this. I know I mentioned it because it is low hanging fruit. I will kick myself over that. But I mentioned Trevor Moore, but Trevor Moore's trade value peaked in the offseason. He's coming off of a very auspicious 30-goal season, probably the only 30-goal season he's ever going to have, on a very high shooting percentage and a very hot first 3 months of the season. That's when his value peaked. He's one of the few players in the top six that doesn't have a new movement clause. It's like right over $4 million or his annual value with term, but he's 29. He's going to be 30. I don't know what team takes it and goes like, this is the piece we needed to be a contender. This is the guy we needed to move forward. All respect to Trevor Moore. They would also never move him, but the Kings just don't have the pieces to make it work. I wrote recently that maybe they could dangle Alex Laferriere because he does have value. He is a guy that you should build around for your future because he's around the same age as Jordan Spence, Brant Clark and QB, and Alex Turcotte. But if I'm a GM, if I'm an opposing GM and taking the Kings out of it, and I'm looking at the Kings, yeah, I would absolutely want to go pick up Alex Laferriere. I would absolutely try to poach Laferriere, either Turcotte, Byfield, and Jordan Spence and Brant Clark. But, as a Kings GM, let's switch back. A lot of those names are, they get the hell out of my office. Don't call me ever again. But yeah, Alex Laferriere probably out of that list is one player I could say, yeah, I mean, like if you incentivize it enough, maybe I can make that happen. He's due for a big pay upgrade. This is on the last year of an $875,000 contract. He's someone that going in the offseason, you're going to have to re-sign for a lot more, and you're going to try to re-sign Gavrikov because that left-handed defensive depth is a black hole, and especially in the prospect pool. So, yeah, to summarize the trade deadline, I would keep your hopes very down, and I would start watching Jake Evans highlights.
Well, I'm going to have to Google Jake Evans later on.
Yeah.
Vladislav Gavrikov, I know he has no movement clause. Is that waivable? Like, is that something he can waive, or like if there was a team like hey, I will let you move me if it's these teams, is that something that's waivable, or is that something that's like ironclad? Because like when you hear like no trade clause, you hear players waive that all the time in other sports. But when you say no movement clause, I'm like I don't know if that's the same thing or if that's like a hockey ease or something.
Yeah, so like an NTC or an NMC, like no trade clause, no movement clause. So like no trade clause will typically be your 10 team no trade list, so that if your 10 teams are all, let's say we're all on the East Coast and you're West Coast, your GM could essentially just go talk to any West Coast team and make a trade happen like that. But if they wanted to talk to an East Coast team, it's on your 10 team no trade list. They would essentially, all that power rests with the player. No movement clause is no movement anywhere. It's something that Kevin Fiala has right now. And I know a few people in the writing room that have mentioned that Kevin Fiala needs to go, right? He does not fit the schematic at all. But since Kevin Fiala has all the cards, Rob Blake would have to go talk to Fiala and be like, hey, is it okay if we move you to Nashville to go pick up Ryan O'Reilly? Or I'm just throwing out a name here. But yeah, he'd be like, I'm not going back to Nashville. No, he has full veto power. So it's technically ironclad, but the maneuverability around that is with the player. If you have a 10-team no trade list, work with the other 22 teams or 21 teams, right? So not ironclad, but pretty ironclad with when you give the player all the power. And I think that is one of the strikes against Rob Blake, is that he handed no trade clauses, he handed those clauses out like candy for the first three or the last like 3 or 4 years. We're very fortunate that Pierre-Luc Dubois did not have one, and we were technically in a buyout window. So
I tell you, I was shocked when they were able to move him. I couldn't believe it. Like, holy hell, this is amazing.
Yeah, you give up with kind of what you're getting, right? We got a goaltender, which luckily Kemper, this is a goaltender safe haven in terms of the way we
Yes.
play. We do foster really good goaltending here because of how safe it is to play for a goaltender. We allow the lowest high danger chances. We are, I believe we're top 3 in medium danger chances, and I believe we're top 5 in low danger chances. We stifle opponents, and if you're a goaltender, that's great. You might as well be in Cabo.
It's just
So
chilling.
yep, you saw the career got revitalized for Cam Talbot. Same thing in Kemper, because that was a risk.
Yeah.
Washington already had their guy, and so when you have Darcy Kemper, who's an ex Stanley Cup champion, who's starting to get in his mid-30s, and you have this player who's still young and this top end center when he was drafted, top 3 pick in Pierre Dubois, it's a good 1-for-1 at the time. But as we're seeing now, the system and the placement of Pierre-Luc Dubois in LA leads to the question again, what was the plan with him? You're going to put him as a 3C and expect him to succeed. You expect QB to go in the same position and succeed. It goes both ways.
So Paul says Kings need a GM like the Eagles' Howie Roseman, the master manipulator for trades. And Howie Roseman has worked a lot of magic in Philly, as you can tell. Winning the Super Bowl this year, and what they've been competitive. It's like top in the NFC over the last so many years with Howie at GM. And that brings me to my next question with you. Rob Blake and Luke Robitaille. You think this is their swan song, or do you think this is the last? Do you think they're on the edge and they're just getting ready to fall forward, or what?
I would say no. I think they're checking off the list to do just well enough to say, okay, well, we could go back at it with them again. And if not, I think like grooming in the wings is Mark Bergevin, who's been the special assistant to the general manager for the last few years. I just ownership wise, they're not going to bring in a guy like Dean Lombardi or someone that does not have that like on spot hockey knowledge. Their background isn't technically hockey. Like a lot of these franchise legends come in and take over teams and it doesn't work. And I think they're still standing behind it because they're essentially being a GM in the perfect market. It's a non-hockey market technically, but yet they bring in a hockey market money, right? There's just like low expectations, but high value. They're like sitting right in the middle. They're just going to do just enough to get we're a playoff team. There's no goal of truly winning it all. And I think you were watching them stay around for long term. I think it's going to be on their end to be like, all right, I'm out or not. It's really going to come down to their decision. I don't think we have an ownership group that says enough is enough. 4 first round exits potentially to the same team with what?
Oh,
and you're sacrificing this core that you had or this future core that you could have built for what? Potentially another rebuild and kind of wasting the early years of Quentin Byfield and Brant Clark just so that Quentin Byfield and Brant Clark, when they're in their mid to late 20s, finally take over a team maybe and then be what? A very average team that's barely making the playoffs and just continuing the cycle over again. You'd think to pull the plug at some point, but that's just not the vision. I think Rob Blake and Luke Robitaille are here to stay. And I don't say that with gusto. I say that's just the reality of the situation is that they're probably going to do well enough I would love to be in the room and hopefully I can go to this press conference at the end of the season if this happens. But just imagine going to a 4th postseason exit press conference with Rob Blake and Luke Robitaille and trying to hear Luke Robitaille say again, but we were right there. He said that last year. It's like, were you really? So I can see them being around. I think they hold, just like those no trade clause and no movement clause we just talked about, I think they hold a lot of the bargaining chips there, Kenny.
Yeah. And it is kind of unfortunate because I feel like it's not going to change until it changes at the top. And the top, for me would be Blake and Robitaille. And as long as that those tires continue to spin, you're going to be driving the same car. So
Yep, exactly.
it is what it is. And like you said, eventually when this younger core does get a chance to take over, it's going to be over halfway through their career, and it's kind of like you're still turning those same tires. Then you lost their peak years.
Yeah, for Clark for sure, because I think as long as Doughty wears the jersey, I definitely don't see I don't see him becoming the number one or
Yeah.
taking number one minutes. I mean, Drew Doughty is probably going to play 25 plus minutes until that man retires. So Clark for sure probably is going to be mid-career before it's like he's the guy in LA.
Yeah.
Whereas Quentin Byfield at least close. That's where the hope is. If there's any fringe or small candles being lit for vigil for anyone in LA, it's the fact that they do have QB playing the way he is at 22 years old. Should have been playing this way at 20 and given somewhat of the full keys, but he has dealt with injuries and that illness. So, but he should have been handed the keys laterally. He's got the build for it. He should have been thrown in the position. But this is I don't fully want to say misguided franchise, but this is kind of in that same realm of connotation there, where it's like they were thinking that one series against Edmonton that went to 7 games, even though it wasn't that close score-wise, if you total it up, I think it was 27 or 29-17 for Edmonton to LA goals scored. You look at that series and you go, it's not that close. They had a 7-game series and they thought, we're right there. And I think that misguided series led to the Kevin Fiala move. You lose Brock Faber. You don't win again. You go to 6 games. They make the PLD move. You go to 5 games, and it's like, are we really thinking of this formula's on the track of success? I think one misguided 7-game series that you thought you were close, while Edmonton was kind of on their rise, you're catching them right before their rise. You thinking that you're right there has led to pretty dramatic and drastic and devastating results. But Quentin Byfield's definitely your shining knight in armor, and potentially could change this franchise future, even though I still think it's mortally wounded, but yet it's still wandering through the forest looking for its sword.
I like Monty Python. It's just a flesh wound.
Yeah, no arms and no legs, and they're still trudging along. But exactly. I think it's tough. I got a tweet from I won't say their name the day but it was on Twitter as direct message saying that the Kings are kind of like the family that owns the 17 and 18-year-old dog that still showcases it. And they're definitely not at this point, but it's like, you're at a point where like, are you going to put the dog down or are you just going to let it live like this? And I don't even think the dog knows it too. So that's why I think Paul brought up a great point earlier with like the Crosby and Malkin thing. They were able to go right back at it 6-7 years down the road after they won their championship. We're going on 11 years. You know, how many more times do you want to throw this at the wall and hope it sticks? For what? So it's tough. Sorry to sound pessimistic out there, Kings fans, but when you cover this team long enough, things just make sense.
And like Pittsburgh is the Eastern, Kings basically, because they're almost in the same type of position. And hearing Pittsburgh chatter, out my way because I am in Pennsylvania. Not really all that close to Pittsburgh, but still, all they're wasting away Crosby's, final years and stuff like that. And, you see some of that stuff online with about Kopitar and Doughty. You need to build around these guys so they can, go on and run for one more cup or whatever. Sometimes you just got to kind of put that dog down.
Yeah,
go back to the dog analogy.
I didn't like the Erik Karlsson move from San Jose. I liked them picking up Jeff Carter. I saw them kind of forming up to have kind of like, one more run at it. But I think Pittsburgh is a success, and I think you should be happy as a Pittsburgh fan. But at least you went back at it with your core 3 guys. You went right back at it, and you had a back-to-back Stanley Cup championships with your core guys that you drafted. Like that's never going to happen for the Kings. Like and this has happened. What Sid was. When he won his first championship, what is he still in 21, 22 years old? Malkin's around the same age. So 7 years later, when they go back to back, they're in their late 20s, or very early 30s, 29, 28, 30. I don't know if you want to look it up, but they're definitely not the same age. This is 11 years. We're talking about a player who's 37, 35 playing your top positions.
Yeah.
It just has not been done in the modern NHL. I don't think it even got done in past generations in the NHL. So what are you trying to like? What is the point? What is the formula here of success? You got to hand over the keys. You just have to hand over the keys. And now we're getting into territory where it's too late. You just got to stick with it. So at least Pittsburgh did it again back to back with their 2 core guys. Now you're in a position where it's like we got these legacy guys. Now you're starting to get into the territory of the Kings, like you're saying, where they are the East Coast version of the Kings. But at least they got a back to back out of their core 3. So
yeah.
You should be happy.
There you go, Pittsburgh fans. If there's any Pittsburgh fans watching besides Paul, there you go. You got something to be happy about.
Yeah, I mean, you have anyone that has championships in the last decade. At least your franchise went out there and if you're a Kings fan at home, like I used to be before I started writing, where you're still kind of watching those Stanley Cup moments and the DVD, like now you're looking at it almost like a high school reunion or a high school yearbook, being like, wow, that was 10 plus years ago.
Yeah.
And thinking that these are the same players they were 10 years ago, 10 plus years ago, you're wrong. I'm sorry. It's just, these are not top three. Like Kopitar was, like we said, probably number 2 to Crosby, and Doughty is probably 1 or 2. And you could say the same thing with Quick. Quick is probably had to have been in the top 3.
Yeah. And well, who was Pittsburgh's goalie? That was it Fleury
I
when they
think
won
when
their
they went back to
cups.
back, it was Matt Murray. And then
Okay.
when they won their first cup, it was Fleury. Yeah.
So I mean, like it's and then they're not quite on a long term success as what Quick had with the Kings. Fleury. I'm not sure how long Fleury was there, but I mean,
Yeah.
so they
Quick stole the show in 2012 for sure, but in
yeah
2014, I would say he was timely. I think they had the best defensive core probably of any 21st century team outside of maybe 2013 Boston. In that 2014 Cup winning team. I mean, Willie Mitchell, Slava Voinov. They had Robin Regier, who got injured, Matt Green, Alec Martinez, Drew Doughty, Jake Muzzin. I think the Boston Bruins 2013 is the only team I think I could envy that, or currently with the Vegas Golden Knights, who just, it's not even fair.
yeah. So cool. Um, all right. So what else do we got here? I think that, to be honest with you, I think that's all I have. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Uh, no, I mean, I would definitely give like a special shout out to Adrian Kempe this year. I think he's been absolutely fantastic. I think we saw him at the Four Nations. I think more people around the NHL should be paying attention to him. He's a special talent. He's finally starting to pick up some traction. I know Oilers fans are as much as they have every right to say we own you. The one guy they definitely can't say they own is Adrian Kempe. He's been lighting it up against the Oilers since that 21-22 series where he got that Game 5 silencer, Duncan Keith on the back check, all set up by the hard forechecking work of Philip Deneau and Trevor Moore prior to that shift. But I think Adrian Kempe deserves a lot more credit. And another silver lining we didn't get to talk about is that Alex Turcotte is following the same development path, even though a few years of injuries, that QB was taking on. If he becomes a solid 2C under Byfield, like we said, there is a foundational core here that Kings fans could keep their head up, their chin up. Okay.
And absolutely, I think Turcotte's been fantastic this year, especially playing with the top line and stuff. And the way I put out there on X a couple times. I just love his tenacity, his
Yeah.
tenaciousness. Being like I don't know if he's a smaller guy or not, but he looks smaller compared to the other
Whew.
players out there. And just him, the way he mixes it up, and he gets rocked sometimes. And
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
against Nashville, he got rocked a couple times. I feel like it was
Yeah.
Nashville, and it's like a dude got right back up, and he was right back at it. It's like, you know what,
Hmm.
hats off, dude.
I think I'm in the same territory as you, because I think even last year, like because of his injury history, you'd see him go into the corner and get laid out, and you're like, but then um, but then you see this year, he's really taken a step up. And I know when I traveled to see the team play in the tri-state trip, and I got to interview him before the New Jersey game at their practice at Prudential. He's a stocky guy. I'm probably sure most people have seen it, but he's like a ton of like neck. Like you could tell he's a very well balanced. Like he's a very strong guy. I wouldn't say he's a keel big. Like a keel is ripped.
Yeah,
Darcy, who's in great shape is Phoenix Copley. I think one of the best in shape guys that the team has. But yeah, I mean Turcotte's probably in the best shape that I've seen him in. He's a great guy to interview, great guy in person. He really seems to take that next level of confidence back. I think he has his confidence back, and I think that's another silver lining for Kings fans, that if he follows the development path that QB is currently at, where he's playing as the winger next to Kopitar and Kempe as Byfield did for a season and a half, now you're looking at the dividends now. So there is some silver lining for sure. And if Turcotte can be that 2C under Byfield becoming a 1C, you're looking at a potentially good core to work with moving forward.
all right, that's great news. 'Cause, like there are some players on the team, currently where if they do get that opportunity, if they do get put in the right situation, that you can see maybe start to build off of that. So that there is glimmers. I feel like it's a glimmer of hope, but it's
Mm-hmm.
just trusting the brass to kind of do the right thing and whatnot is kind of I'm on the fence with that part of it.
I hear you.
Out of the box sports entertainment is a great show, and thank you, Connor, for joining us. You're part of the Out of the Box Sports family. Now there you go, you got family. How about
Love
that?
to hear it. Love to hear it. Pleasure to be on.
All right, so real quick before we check out, Connor, where can they check you out at?
At Lords of the Rinks on Twitter, or you could just go to. We switched over to Roundtable as our platform, but the Hockey News LA, you could always type us in and check out our stories. We got a team of 5 writers now that are putting out great content, and hopefully by the start of next season we'll have our own pod and maybe have some of the members of Out of the Box Sports Network on as well. So that's where you can find us.
All right. So real quick before we check out again, I stammer on. That's how all my podcasts go. Coming up for the Kings here Saturday, tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern. For you West Coasters, 6 p.m. They have Utah at home, the Utah Hockey Club. Then they play Vegas Golden Knights on Monday, 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific. Then Vancouver at home on Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. Before they head out to Dallas to wrap up February. That's Friday at 8 p.m. So a couple big games coming up. They got to win that game against Utah and get off on the right foot coming back off of this break. But then looking at Vegas Golden Knights, that's a huge game there, the number 2 seed right now in the Pacific. And then Vancouver is just behind the Kings there in the Pacific, nipping at our heels. And then of course Dallas, an awesome team there in the Central. They're sitting second as well, and their point total is I have their point total here. Dallas is sitting at 35, 18, and 2 with 72 points. I mean, they're kicking butt too. So, I mean, it's no easy games.
Who's not going to be looking forward to that Dallas game after the last game we had against Dallas? I had to pay for $10 internet on United. Never fly United, by the way. I'm definitely going to plug that. But so I was watching that game while up in the air, and that was probably for me one of the games of the. It's not Kings hockey whatsoever. It was back and forth, but that was probably the game of the year. So that's going to be one heck of a rematch.
Yeah.
I think that's the game I'm looking forward to most. That and Vegas for sure, because it's been a while since we played Vegas. So it's always good to do a measuring stick matchup like that.
I think we're 1-1 against Vegas so far this season, but it was so long ago that
exactly
2 totally different teams now.
You saw the first game against Edmonton, right? It was a 4-3 overtime win, right? And then we play them a few weeks later, and it's in their barn. It's a 1-0 game that a non-even strength goal is scored against to beat us. So, yeah, it's always good to see where you're matching up, and I think that's a good kind of litmus test to see where this team's going to line up on playoff time.
Yep. Just like my Pappy Fry used to say, break out the measuring stick. Here we go.
Yep.
So,
love that.
All right. Connor, thank you so much. I appreciate it to no end. Absolutely. It's a thrill for me to be 100% honest with you because I really do hold you in the highest regard. I love reading your stuff on X. So, guys, be sure to check out Connor's stuff on X. Connor and Caro, 2 great dudes there. Hockey knowledge out of the wazoo. If you know where the wazoo is at, they just and like you displayed it here, like you know your stuff, you really do. And I hopefully I can have you on again sometime. Hopefully you had a good time with this as well as I did. So thank you very much. And until next time, Kings fans,
I'll be standing by for the invite. Appreciate you again.
Absolutely. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and where the hell's my outro? Okay, there it is. All right. So again, thank you everybody. Until next time, Connor, thank you. I stammer at the end of my shows for some odd reason. I don't know why.
We love it.
All I got to say now is go Kings, go. See you later.